Hi everyone, it's MechMaster J. Today we're doing something a little different. Um, I didn't realize I could actually download Google Drive files in different formats or anything. Uh, Silly me. Gosh, I'm behind. And this is a little different in orientation for my screen compared to what you're going to be looking at. Um, So I've talked a little bit about having my own mech game. Well, this is my basic character creation rules, just very simple stuff. Uh, these rules are for quickly creating a new mecha. You'll find that mallards, some mecha, and other non-mech vehicles may not conform to these rules. Feel free to use a calculator. You can also make up a name for your mech. Examples include Steel Ninja F and Scarecrow Unit 03. Mallards are a type of drone in my game. They can be manned, they can be unmanned. Um, Total armor integrity. Think of this as hit points. Roll two four-sided dice, plus 6, then multiply by 10. This provides a range from 80 to 140. And then it talks about each part having a certain percentage of that result, and rounding up for arms, rounding down for legs. In universe, this has a reason, which is that the slight difference in durability for legs, for some units anyway, not all of them, uh, is more geared towards the idea that you might get out even if you don't have weapons working right now. Whereas the other way around would be, well, you can't move around, but you can shoot in like a direction. Why would you do that? Right? They'd rather have the pilot back, especially if they're a particularly skilled pilot, uh, or, have the machine and the pilot back with whatever is in the black box recording system, uh, rather than have it all be trashed. There's energy in this game. This is a very basic resource to use. I haven't really started working on how much ammunition weapons will use for all of them. For some of them, I just plain don't want to because, yeah, you could spend a little time reloading, or it's like so minimal that it doesn't matter. Here, have a little kit that you take out of a slot and put into somewhere. Oh no, it takes less than 2 seconds. Why would I penalize someone for that? Usually. Some stuff it might take a little more time or it might be a little more careful of a process even if it takes the same amount of time. So yeah, that might cost an extra action or something. Scan range, I might change it from scan range to target range or targeting range, is expressed in kilometers. Uh, roll a 10-sided dice, divide by 2, round up, add 3, gives a range of 4 to 8. Uh, Energy and total armor integrity are basically designed to be inverse. If you have 80 armor integrity, you have 120 energy. If you have 120 energy, you have if you have 120 armor integrity, you have 80 energy. If you have 80 armor integrity, you have 120 energy, right? Very much the idea of like, okay, some units are going to be more specialized than others. Similarly with scan range and engagement speed, which these things could hypothetically move much faster, but engagement speed is sort of here's the safe range for when you're flying around and stuff. Uh, in part because you need to be able to aim properly, even with computer assistance. And going too fast means losing out on some of that. And, if you go too fast, hypothetically, you might hurt yourself, stuff like that. There's some mecha equipment, some of which is built in, such as there's a basic head weapon, You have an evasion pattern and an ECM defense, fireball or two or something. There's a certain amount of equipment to pick from, some of which are worth more than one piece of equipment. You can select tune-ups. Tune-ups they're a little hard for me to explain. They're really just things you tack on. They add to your mech and its functionality. That's about the only way I could put it without showing off an entire list or a lot of lists. Uh, Pilot archetype, totally optional for the purposes of quick building. Um, in part because I want to keep things quick, and in part because, uh, being totally honest, I'm good on the numbers part, not so much on the make role play make sense part. So the idea of like, oh, here's a pilot archetype. If I have to cut it out to help people save some time, sure, fine. Um, Also, pilots get to be their own characters in this game, though, you know, preferably as minimal as possible. The main focus is on mecha action, not on uh, people having a shootout in a bar. But if you need that scene, you need that scene. Yeah. And then here is our actual page for writing down all the information. Uh, Keep in mind, I'm actually showing a PDF at the moment. I cannot edit this. um, so I'm gonna switch this over, and yeah, here's like so many notes, some of which I'm sure I probably finished using, uh, and can afford to just erase, but yeah. Um, this is a massive list. Okay, I don't know how to bookmark on here yet. And as you can see, it says 46 pages. It's not kidding. And that's a decent size for a starting document. This is not the only document that I intend to release initially. Um, D&D has a 3-book system of starting material. I figure, yeah, it's a good idea to do that. Not that information necessarily has to be stratified across 3 books, but um, I just like the idea of things being more dedicated across different documents. And then this is the pilot rules, about 29 pages. Uh, Keep in mind, none of these two are exactly complete at the moment. They could still have plenty of work. I'm in between different projects for the overall Tetsu no Shiro uh, property. But let's get to rolling some dice, and I do have my uh, drive open in another tab. I have the Skyblade, which is whatever we're making here. It doesn't have to make sense. I just need a little placeholder. So let's start with the total armor integrity. Let me just make sure you guys can see that. Okay. Yeah, I can see it. You guys can see it. 8. Ooh, nice. All right. So 8 plus 6, that's going to be 14. As you can tell, I decided to, whoops, that's a 14 over there though. So, and notice I'm making this an out of number, and that's because hypothetically speaking, I'm pretty sure there are people who would want to type the amount of stuff they get in here. This is going to be a damn beefy unit. Okay, good. There is a bit of guidance in here about if these numbers would end up being fractions. Uh, which is that, and keep in mind, 42 is a lot of amount for a torso, and it makes it really painful to try and fight this thing, whatever I equip. Um, but let's say there was a 21.5 instead for each of these, right? What I would then be doing is I would be rounding this down to 21 and rounding this up to 22 because I have in-game universe logic to some of this stuff, right? It's not just, oh, I made a game. It's how would someone actually want to design mecha, ignoring the square cube rule for making it humanoid, right? And it would be, well, the arms can afford to go. If I have to pick between arms, which hold your weapons, and legs, which generally don't hold weapons and instead function as thrusters. Now, is that a realistic way to design a mech? No. Is it going to look particularly uh, specialized or unique? Yeah, sure. Um, so, legs have higher emphasis because you want the pilot and possibly the machine and possibly the black box all coming back if some terrible thing were to occur. Okay, and that brings us, whoops, didn't mean to close that. Let's close those out. Uh, that was armor integrity. And now we work on the energy amount. This is 140. 200 minus 140 is 60. This thing is not going to have a lot of energy relative to other machines, but it will have some amount. There's some weapons that are so damn costly that this is firing only once or twice of that weapon. And that's fine. Next, we have 1d10 divided by 2, which will actually be rounded up, plus 3. Let's go to dice roller. Here's a d10. 4. Okay, that keeps it simple. Uh, 4 divided by 2 is 2, plus 3. That's gonna, whoops. It's gonna make this have 5 scan range, which is basically sight, and that'll make it 7 engagement speed, which is basically movement. And these are expressed in kilometers. Um, Kilometers are just easier units of measurement to deal with, and I know that they don't translate 100% to, you know, feet, miles, etc. Uh, in non or in integers, I should say, in whole numbers, right? So if I say it's 20 miles ish, and I'm rounding down by a fair bit or rounding up by a fair bit, I hope you'll forgive me for that. Okay, getting back to our mecha construction rules. Okay, so there's basically a 1 to 2 kilometer ranged attack that's equipped to the head, standard concepts like a head Vulcan or an energy beam type of thing, uh, especially in terms of like a Gundam, or I'm thinking a little bit about the Valcione or Valcione, I should say, from the Cybuster animation. Very loosely based on the games, but it's a fun entry on its own, and it doesn't make me mad because of how loose it is. It's not a complete reordering of events, it's a complete other story. Um, Gosh, do I want to do inborn, inbuilt physical, or inbuilt energy? This doesn't have a lot of energy. It would make more sense to say it has a Vulcan shot. Um, Keep in mind, this says 50 on it. This is a D100 game, typically speaking. So this is a rating of sorts for not just how accurate, but also how damaging. Typically, Vulcan shots and stuff are kind of an exception. There's also a basic melee attack. This is called a slam. I couldn't deal with the whole idea of having strike, unarmed strike, punch, etc. Like I needed something else. Um, I think back on the number of times people have said, "Hey, you shouldn't have called weapon attacks and extra attack and the attack action the same thing in D&D 5th edition because it's too damn confusing." And yeah, I'm trying to avoid that. You have weapons, use the attack action for them. You have slams, you still use the attack action for them, but it's very clear that way with the nomenclature. So I'm actually going to write slam 50 in on the torso just because, yeah, technically I should assign it to all of the parts except the torso, but shortcuts for a moment. So there's that. What else is there? Oops. Sorry for making that go away. It wasn't quite the direction I needed. Let's see. Evasion pattern 50 and ECM defense 50. Um, there's a certain amount of just assumed moving aroundness going on in this game. I am not going to assume that you stand there like an idiot in a real robot. I'm going to assume that you are actually trying not to be hit and trying to hit things. And 50 is a good, decent benchmark of just 1-2 chance versus an enemy of equivalent skill, right? And then let's pull this up again. Sorry, I'm moving through windows. You guys might not always see that. You can pick 5 additional pieces of equipment for free from the Tetsu Shiro sample document, currently in pages 23 to 30. Yes, there's about 8 pages there because of that numbering. X equipment, explosives, wide lasers, and gravity weapons are each worth 2 pieces of equipment. Okay, let me break this down just a little bit. So looking at a Vulcan shot 50, right? Pretty self-explanatory. You roll a D100, and if you get 50 or lower, you're within that number's range, and so you hit, right? There's kind of a default assumption of uh, versus equals skill in this numbering system. So let's say someone's got an evasion pattern 70. This is a Vulcan shot 50. Their evasion pattern's better. And relative to someone of equal skill, you would have a 50-50 chance. The difference in skill gets reflected, though. So what's the difference between 50 and 70? That's 20, right? You subtract that from the baseline of 1 in 2 chances. So this is now you have a 30% chance of hitting, not a 50% chance of hitting, because that 20 gets subtracted from your stuff for hitting. If I use slightly different numbers, it would become a little more obvious that, yeah, the 50 matters a little more, not just on the piece of equipment itself, but as a reference point. That's a good one. Let's say this is 65 and the enemy has 40. All right, 65 and 40, yours is higher. The difference between those is 25 versus the 50-50 chance, add to it because your number is higher, you have a 75% chance of hitting, because the point is you have two numbers, right? You have the attacking number and you have the evading or defending number. And then there's the assumption of equal skill. You have to modify based off of the gulf. Let's put it that way. Um, 50 versus 50, 100 versus 100, 10 versus 10, you have equal skill. You're not going to change having a 50-50% chance relative to the one other character with the same number. If someone's highly skilled and you're highly skilled, right, and you're both roughly in the same bracket of skill, if someone else decides to come along and they're not worth an awful lot, you have a very high chance of hitting, a very high chance of evading what they do. But if you're fighting someone of higher skill, right, it's closer to that 1 in 2 chance of hitting or missing. So I know that's a little bit long-winded of an explanation. Explosives and wide lasers are, relatively speaking, there's two kinds of damage in this game for the most part. There's physical damage and energy damage. I'm not going to be a weirdo and say explosive damage is necessarily its own type, or that chemical of all things is its own type. I'm not really going with Armored Core over here, and I wasn't even thinking of Armored Core at the time anyway. This keeps it simple. I don't have too much explaining to do between the two. It's, are you being hit with matter or are you being hit with energy? Because in theory they do different things. Explosives are a kind of weapon that they don't always do like a wide area of effect or anything, but there are modifiers in the game called tune-ups. You can select one if you're high enough level that says that you actually deal explosive type damage rather than physical type damage, and this cuts around certain defenses against physical damage. Similar with wide lasers, um, they're subtypes, but they're high grade subtypes. Let's call them. Gravity weapons are different. They sometimes they're a higher version of energy weapons, or sometimes they're just something that typically has like an effect that says like, oh, this unit that's been hit with this doesn't move, or stuff like that. And it does it in a different way than having like a computer virus. A computer virus fights against an ECM defense. It fights against a firewall, essentially. Gravity doesn't deal with firewalls. It's normal. You deal with evasion patterns. X equipment is unique in that, as I was saying, with all the numbers I was throwing out, that kind of equipment, X equipment, doesn't really reference that dynamic in the same way. It could be that this is just a standard buff only for you. You don't need to reference your success rate, your accuracy, however you call it, versus like someone's ability to dodge you or something. Some of them might just be, well, you can't use it computer guided. You have to manually aim it for some reason or another. And so you use your own piloting stats instead. Or maybe there's something where it inverts the relationship, right? I could imagine a tractor beam or maybe a highly magnetized weapon might be designed in a way where, oh, a lower number is worse, a higher number is better. I don't know. I haven't thought too much about that end of it, but X equipment typically doesn't relate to whether you'll hit or miss. I'm gonna do this in a little bit. I'm gonna cover some of these things. The character creation tune-up is a particular level of tune-up. Tune-ups are just little things you add on, but these are basic ones, very basic ones. And some of them can only be selected during character creation. It's not listed in this one, in this document, but I have stuff that says, okay, your machine's a little smaller, it'll take more damage if hit sometimes, but also there's a good chance that you might have a much better chance of evading. Not that your evasion pattern's better, but that you might roll twice or something like that. Or rather, the other guy rolls twice and takes the worst result. Or there's being a heavy duty unit, aka a super robot, where, yeah, your unit's a little bigger and it's also bulkier. Uh, and because it's bigger and bulkier, it deals more damage and takes less damage by a certain amount. Now there's pilot archetypes. I'm gonna breeze through a couple, I guess. Um, at the moment, there's suggested role-playing traits plus about 4 different gameplay attributes, some of which are geared towards combat, some of which aren't. More of them are geared towards combat than not. Um, I'm a numbers guy, I'm a combat guy. Role playing is not my strong suit in terms of mechanics and things. I really don't want to do social combat mechanics because I think at that point combat is just the only mechanic. Social combat is just combat, it's just giving a different way of calling it combat. That's how I think of it. Um, this is all just reviewing a little bit. That's our where we're putting things. We don't always have to put weapons in each of these, by the way, and I might actually go a little light on some of this stuff. Let me just reference my player here. Okay. And this isn't the Google document, so I'm gonna need to really go through. And as you can see, there's much more about this. There's also something called F equipment or flawed equipment. If stuff has an F in its name somewhere, it works. It won't work entirely as it should, but it works enough times. You just don't want to deal with too much of it. Um, as you can see, I've got pre-generated machines already. This is just me going through a process. These were made before I came up with the slapdash rules, as I like to call them for the moment. Mallard drones, likewise, they definitely don't fit. The solar barge is sort of the first, let's call it a massive scale machine. Um, Large ass ships and things. This is not only going to be mechs and drones. You gotta have something that's a space battleship after all, or something of the sort. Um, okay. I don't have a lot of energy. I don't really want to look at the cold fusion laser rifle, but that's a thing. This is a piece of equipment geared towards helping the survivability of a solar barge. It also, it's just a really tough, um, 13 damage. That's a lot of damage. And it's a two-handed only weapon, actually. And you get a little bit of shooting stars. Shooting stars are the currency of the game. I didn't want to be like, here you go, have credits. It's a little boring to hear. Got energy shields, collapsible shields that are worn sort of on the wrist, more or less. Energy sword, missiles. Bit of a interesting way for me to handle railguns, honestly. Uh, I'm still debating on if this needs to be with the player equipment or if this needs to go with a particular enemy faction. Here you basically have funnels, if anyone's familiar with that. This is a repair kit. And this isn't so much a damaging shotgun as much as it is a, hey, would you like to have some nerfs against someone? Gosh, I think about the amount of equipment I have in here, some of which gets a little more specific than others. Yeah, let me think. Actually, let me review. Okay. A lot of hit points. Decent sight. Slightly fast. Not a lot of energy. Mostly physical weapons here. I don't really want to do a pseudo pilot. That's more. It's more story related, honestly. I should really take this and move it elsewhere. Um, this is more just a general equipment list. Yeah, let me think. Oh, 40 energy damage over here, 30 energy costs over here. Wouldn't even get to fire it twice. Now, this is a line attack, deals a lot of damage. Um, and it is so draining on your energy sources that things that give you better energy usage or give you energy regen, they don't like this weapon. It's that powerful. Ah, yes, and some of these, especially if it's an activated interface tool, uh, have a little bit of flavor to them. Precaution: the kinetic instrumentation neurological guidance system is a man-machine interface designed to temporarily shortcut the complex control machinery of a Nix in order to cut down on split-second slip-ups in high-stress combat scenarios. To replicate this effect in an adult that lacks sufficient cortisol levels, the system will prioritize the pilot's survival by flooding their brain with cortisol. Pilots with a history of routine activations should seek out psychological counseling and request a period of alternative duties. Um, there's another version of this. Don't tell anyone. Oh, and since this was the first doc, a lot of this stuff comes with some amount of flavor text. Let me actually go back up to. Why is this doing that? Go away. Guess it doesn't want to go away. How do I make this? Uh, there we go. Cold Fusion Laser Rifle 60. Here's some flavor text for you. Single fire, two-handed range energy weapon, arm weapon held in the hand. That's not the flavor text. This laser rifle fires a ray of chthonium, an exotic electromagnetic particle that creates exceptional energy loss when introduced to a system in more of like a chemical or physical sense. Uh, when the ray hits an unshielded machine, that machine takes 4 energy damage, and the machine that took damage from the cold fusion laser rifle rolls one 100-sided die. If they roll a 60 or lower, right, the number listed here, the part that was damaged is locked up until the end of their turn, basically saying it can't be used. A locked up torso causes a machine to be shut down for 1 or 2, essentially, of its turns. It costs 10 energy to fire a cold fusion laser rifle, so you could get 6 shots out of this thing. Um, it's not the worst sidearm, honestly. Um, you could hold it one handed for only 55% chance of hitting, or you could hold it two-handed for the full 60. I don't really fault anyone for holding most two-handed weapons one-handed. It's a big machine, it can handle that kind of stress. It's not preferred in theory, but it's a game. I'm not going to fault anyone too badly on the aesthetics of how they're firing their weapons. I don't want to touch this. This is a very high power piece of equipment. Um, gosh. Well, let's assume this is kind of an all-rounder machine. It needs a little bit of everything. Oops. But it needs to be physical towards, enemies, not energy. Let's go for the emergency steel cutter 70. A single fire, one-handed melee physical weapon held in the hand. When you hit with this weapon, the machine takes 6 physical damage. If you roll 15% or more below your success rate, so let's say your stuff somehow rolls out to be a 70% chance of hitting. If you roll 55 or lower, basically, you can make a second attack with this weapon as part of the same action. You only gain a free second attack once each round, so there is a limit on this. While this weapon is equipped to a machine that has a weaponless hand, you can use an action to wield it in that hand. Not every weapon can be pulled out of your butt or out of your wrist sheath or what have you, to put it simply. So yeah, let's copy. Let's go over here. I don't care too much about which arm it goes in. And then, let's be fair. This is probably something where, because it has a melee option, it's gonna be a little tricky getting in if you don't have some amount of defenses. A spherical energy barrier X actually isn't a bad option. Costs 20% of your maximum energy to use. And then that amount that was spent becomes a barrier that can specifically block against, I think, only energy weapons. Let me double check. No, just in general. Well, that's right, I had a different thing that only did against energy weapons. Yeah, so let's put that here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Let's double check our construction rules. 5 pieces of equipment. Okay, so I could do let's check out one or two more pieces of equipment. Just keep it simple. It's already got high armor, so I don't have to worry too much about survivability. Melee looks good. It's a little fast. Let's see. In some pieces of equipment, I have actually added 2 or so entries just because I need to reference them myself for NPCs. The difference between this is and this It's basically 1 point of uh, energy damage and 1 point of cost. So this one over here, the 65, costs 6 energy to fire, deals 6 energy damage. This one, the 70, does 70 energy to fire and 70 damage. Sorry, not 70, 7 and 7. Yeah. Gosh, just a little bit more thinking in my head, please. Sorry. I'm sure this has taken a little while. Let me double check. Well, we're 40 minutes in. This is taking longer than I thought. Sorry. Um, yeah, let's keep this kind of simple. Um, high armor already has something defensive. It has a melee weapon. It should really get a ranged weapon or two. Mm, yeah, let me think. I suppose I should give it some heat-seeking missiles. This is one of those weapons where it doesn't care about facing. I'm gonna have to change facing to be a more advanced rule. Uh, you have a selection of missiles. If someone dodges your missiles the first time, they're heat-seeking. It'll have them go turn around and try to find them. There's ways to throw them off, though. Um, you can have up to 3 missiles fired in each action. This is a 3 action game, by the way. So you could empty out most missiles uh, for this one at least. Um, I'm having to think a little bit about scalability. This game, I don't necessarily want everything to be, oh, well, that'll just do more damage and be more accurate. Some of this stuff, I think it should be, oh, well, this went from 55 to 60. Let's put in one more missile or something like that. Maybe 2 more. So yeah, let's put that over the left arm. Okay, just reviewing, we have a Vulcan shot. This is useful to build on later. We have a basic melee attack. We have a another melee attack. It can be done a little more quickly. We have a default evasion pattern. We have a default firewall, and we have something that can basically it could take up like 12 energy. That's a decent amount of hits from lower damage enemies that do maybe 4 or 5 damage at a time. Uh, and you've got well, I could be nice and oops. Sorry for the yawning. Let's just do this, right? Amount out of amount, right? Because this has actual ammunition that can be expended, unlike some of the other weapons, which, as I described earlier, not all of them do. Let's refer back to our build rules. Okay, one character creation tune-up from the Tetsu no Shiro sample document, currently in pages 33 and 34. I feel safe showing off that much. Um, I'm not going to show every piece of equipment, mind you. I'm not going to show off every rule either. I want to keep this kind of a surprise. Keep in mind when I say things like 5% or 15%, that's a pretty standard just here's an addition to something. It's not going to be something like, oh, 5%, but you've got 60 here. So what's 5% of 60? Now add that. I'm not doing that. Um, it's a D100 for a reason. So, oh, I should go over charging attacks. That'll help contextualize some of this. Uh, Charging is when you use 2 or 3 of your actions for moving, typically in a straight line, no bends, just a total straight line. Um, so some characters, they might be better at melee attacks, but only when they're basically dashing up to an enemy and making a reckless, foolhardy attack from a distance. So you'd go for charging attack specialist. Or you might be doing more up close melee. You're not going up too quickly. You're focusing on, you know, being up in their face by a lot more than just charging up to them. Range energy weapons, explosive weapons, range physical weapons can increase Nyx's energy by 10. Now, I could do that, and that changes the energy amount from 60 to 70. Let me bring up a calculator. You might not even see this. Let's see, 70 divided by 5. Okay, so that would increase the spherical energy barrier X from having 12 cost and therefore 12 substitute armor integrity to 14. A couple points doesn't hurt. It doesn't help that much, but doesn't hurt. Increasing the total armor integrity by 10. That goes from 140 to 150. I mean, some people might find that helpful. Um, I don't feel too much concern on this machine with that, so I'm fine not doing that. Increase Nyx's engagement speed by 2 kilometers. Increase scan range by 2 kilometers. Add 5% to your shield rolls. It's called the Skyblade. It's specialized towards air. And I don't necessarily have to describe, oops. I don't necessarily need to describe all this extra text. Um, Environmental specializations, basically. You're good in space, but not in other environments. You're good in water or some, liquid nitrogen or something, but not in other environments. You're good on the ground or on a rock of some kind, but not on other environments. You're good in the air, but not in other environments. And I felt that making each of these was kind of helpful. Um, it's a little boost all around or a little nerf all around. It's a little bit of risk. Um, some machines are going to be specialized to space combat, especially if they're built in space. Some machines are not designed to go anywhere except in the water as much because there are a lot of issues with going into liquids. Some things they were designed first, so they're sticking around on the ground. There's not really a lot of flight to them. They might have a flight system, but it's more likely you're going to be jumping rather than flying. Uh, some stuff, this is just plain designed for air supremacy, and air and water and space are not the same environment, so it doesn't help, and maybe they might not even be able to land properly. And that was kind of my idea with some of these. Super Robot Wars has definitely helped me out with thinking about some of these issues. Okay, fine. I'll give a little bit of a preview on some Session 4 tune-ups. Keep in mind, character creation tune-ups can also be selected on Session 1 after, let's say Session 2, right? Creation session and then Session 2. And this isn't every 4 levels for all of them. Um, Better head weapon, better slam, uh, being able to intercept missiles and stuff. That's a useful one, I think. Um, Making an extra slam as part of your first attack, or making a slam with a melee attack. I could imagine some use for this. And keep in mind, some of these are designed to work together. This works with this. This works with this. And um, as you can see, I have environmental movement difficulties and hazards in mind. Um, you're not going to want to use electricity in salt water. It's not a good idea. All right, let's put this back up towards, well, I guess towards the weapons. Um, I have reasons to call the basic machines of the basic EarthGov type faction a Nix. All comes down to a bit of a concept that just popped into my head one day, which is where I really started with building everything. You might notice that the most immediate core document of this game is called the sample document. I have a timeline in my game. This game has a timeline that more or less officially starts in 2100. It can go beyond 2149, but that's where the initial story ends up. Uh, the previous government, before it was taken down, decided, we've discovered dark matter, it's over in that direction, let's go make some probes and things to uh, have all that be mined out. And they got referred to as the Hades Project because god of the underworld and riches in the underworld. It felt a little appropriate, you know? Alright, this thing is specialized towards air. And I'll be nice, I'll give a preview of some pilot archetypes. Oh yeah, and this is a thing that indicates I have thoughts in my game that I would like to express to people sometimes, with a little more than just, oh, here's a thing. So let's start this off. Pilot archetypes. Pilot archetypes are an integral part of the mecha genre. A mecha without a pilot or a pilot substitute is a hunk of metal that might better serve as a statue or a place to hide. While the mecha is an oversized surrogate for the pilot is the personality and nervous system of the pilot. Tactics, reflexes, maintenance, and style are fairly easy to standardize, if you're just a cadet. Below you'll find a list of pilot archetypes, some of which might describe your character's outlook, personal capabilities, and behavior. You don't have to stick to listed outlooks or behaviors at all time, but they're a good start as you make a name for yourself and start to mesh into your team. This game isn't all 100% designed for team play. You can do one player, one game master, or two players, one game master, or one player, two game masters, I suppose. Uh, the idea here, though, is you're probably going to be in a team. It's traditionally how role playing games end up. And um, you can do things to uh, think about who you are in this setting. So let's start with the first two. First one, the Guardian. You are strong like a wall of iron, unflinching and protective. When your friends need a shield, you're there to put yourself between them and as much danger as possible. Your endurance is so great that showing up to a shouting match will put a dent into the morale of lesser men. On the flip side, you can have a hard time opening up. Carrying the shield is a burden for everyone else, which is why you don't ask others to carry it, even when you're tired. Guardians make excellent bodyguards, dock workers, and athletes. And as you can see, I have two kinds of skills. Stuff for combat, stuff not so much for combat. Rescue Rush. whether you are in your Nyx or not. You can use a reaction when a teammate or a bystander would take a hit to make one movement towards them. If you move to an adjacent area next to them, you can take the melee hit instead, then knock the attacker prone. If you move between them and a ranged attacker, you can take the ranged hit instead, then grant full cover from that direction. You're in the way. It's a good thing. Dauntless. Whether in or out of your Nyx, if a non-gravity effect would move you by force, you are only moved half as far. If someone wants to throw you around or something with, let's say they have some legs that they're used for tethers, right? And they want to rip you away from somewhere, you're not moved as much. You know how to plant your feet and all that. The shield. Whether you are in or out of your Nyx, you can use a reaction to cut the damage of a hit against you in half. You also gain 1 more successful block usage, or 5 more substitute armor integrity with defensive tools as appropriate. Heavy Lifter. You have 10 extra hit points for each body part. You can also carry 3 additional non-heavy items or 1 additional heavy item. Finally, your Nyx doesn't lose any engagement speed from the extra armor plating loadout equipment. Um, some stuff can change your Nyx's ability to move around as quickly. This guy is not affected by that. He knows what he's doing, and he knows how to make sure his Nyx is doing what it's supposed to. Archetype 2, the Hunter. You're patient, calculating, and ruthless. When a foe is in your sights, they can't get away. Your foes know that no matter where your friends know that no matter where you are, your vigilance will keep them safe. However, sometimes your senses keep you from calming down, and your calculating nature may lead others to see you as cold and distant. Hunters make excellent spies, snipers, and enhanced soldiers. Yes, I did think about the enhanced soldiers thing a little bit. I'm not making an archetype for that. Eyes open. Whether in or out of your Nyx, you have a sense for danger that others lack. Your sight increases by 20 meters. This is a pilot related thing, along with some of this other stuff. And your Nyx's scan range is increased by 1 kilometer. You also increase your initiative bonus by 10. Yes, people can go at different speeds in initiative, determining whether they go first or not. You have a higher chance of getting to go first. Out for blood. Whether in or out of your Nyx, you have a knack for pursuit. You can use an action to select one target until the end of the wave. Wave referring to a unit of combat measurement for time and stuff. That target cannot receive cover from your ranged attacks unless it has full cover, and if that target is within half of your engagement speed or movement distance, rounded up, you can move up to that amount to make melee attacks against them. Interceptor. Whether you are in or out of your Nyx when an enemy moves into your range for one ranged or thrown weapon, or moves next to a teammate within your range for a ranged or thrown weapon. You can use a reaction to make one ranged or thrown attack with that weapon. Parallel processor, non-combat skill, and this is a useful one. You can multitask effectively on 2 tasks in the same area. Additionally, your Nyx can do a scanning pulse as a full action, which reveals enemy positions within its scan range that aren't concealed by ECM effects. Uh, if something's behind cover, that's great. You can still tell where they are as long as it's not, I don't know, using a stealth module or something. You can also do 2 tasks in the same area. What does this mean? Well, this means, let's say you're sitting at your computer, you're doing research. You could also be doing something else while doing research, and this doesn't really bother you. Well, I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna use the Guardian build because I feel like we get something out of uh, a lot of this. We get to help other people with all of our ridiculous number of hit points. Uh, we're not moved as far away from other people or as far towards other people, so we can better handle doing that. We can take half damage when we feel like it. We can use, you know, stuff such as shields with a certain number of durability against hits once more. Uh, or that shield, that spherical barrier, it gets 5 more points. That's that's a difference. 12 to 17, that makes sense. And for being a pilot, um, yeah, 10 hit points, that's a lot per body part. Um, Carrying extra stuff, that's helpful. You get to help your friends out. And we're not using the extra armor plating loadout, but if we were, you don't lose any speed from using it. So this is a pretty good archetype to work with. We're not using the young blood, which is described further in, but that also means I don't have to select an extra tune-up. So let's paste over here. Hold up. Okay, whatever. And let's just subtract the in there. Ooh, our character needs a name here as a pilot. This should probably get bumped in terms of font size, just a little bit. Okay, that is 14. That's 14. We don't need a crazy name. We don't need to do something like, say, Saji Crossroad from Gundam 00. That's kind of a crazy name to think about. Um, hmm. Gosh, let's say Kevin Robertson. I don't know. It's a pretty standard name. Very American, I guess. Let's underline this stuff wherever that is. Here we are. I'm not used to pulling the stuff out with only half of the thing open, so apologies for that. I'm sorry this took so long. Yeah. All right, so this is the Skyblade. It's a high hit point unit. Uh, we can take a good solid look at ourselves and say, yeah, we're specced out for that too. We can take full advantage of all of this stuff. We don't have a lot of energy, but we're not using much with a lot of energy. Um, we can see decently far. It's not as far as a standard all-rounder unit, but it makes up for it with the slight boost in speed. Uh, it's specialized towards air combat, which is good. It's got a melee weapon. It has a basic melee attack, has defenses, has the ability to handle some amount of electronic warfare, and it has missiles. This is good stuff. Obviously, you'll want to do things uh, to notate that actually this thing might be more effective. And I like to do that by showing that off. Uh, though at the same time, this is not the best way to notate that stuff because if I'm in the wrong environment, right, instead it'd be a 45 for a lot of these, or a 65 in this case, or 50 in this case. But, this is taking advantage of if we're in the air. which this thing will be doing a lot. I'm quite confident in that. Okay. Uh, as you can see, this process took me about an hour. Sorry for the video being so damn long. Uh, I'll try and keep everything much shorter next time. I'm just going to exit all these things out. Uh, let's clear this stuff. I don't really need it being lurked at. All right. Uh, hope you all enjoyed the video. I know I didn't go over that much equipment. I didn't really go too into depth over it. Um, I'll probably review this one ahead of time and go over the actual functionality of the Skyblade because I think that would be kind of nice to do. And I might have to ask a friend of mine to, I don't know, maybe do a mirror match or something in my game. That'd be a nice time. Uh, I've had a number of mirror matches with friends, especially with my friend Oscar. He's been very helpful at making sure that I can playtest any of this stuff in the first place, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. Um, actually, that might not be a bad idea. I could do a video showing, well, not showing, but kind of recounting a story. Uh, Probably the first playtest overall. Um, but it's nearly an hour 10. I'm sorry for it being so damn long, guys. I hope that this uploads decently. Um, have a nice night.